just want to, okay, I just want to say, oh, let's give it one more minute till maybe a couple more people come on. You should have a Tanakh, by the way. You should have a Tanakh. Basically, we're going to be looking at, yeah, there's a file with the Mekorot. I will put the Mekorot up on I will share the screen. Okay. So ladies, if you can, please share open your camera so that we can see your shining face, or maybe it's not so shining this morning, but we have to try
I'm going to leave and come back because I don't know why my camera's not ready. I'll be right back soon.
Okay, no problem. Okay. Okay, so I guess people are coming in. 1 minute. Hi, Neshama. I didn't get a chance to say hello to you yesterday.
Good morning. How are you?
Baruch Hashem, yom yom. Please turn on your camera, everybody, because we need each other today. We need each other through this period. We need to see each other. We need to take encouragement from each other's faces, and I think it's really, really important. So
Simi Boker Tov, it's the Al Sheikh, that's the source sheet, because I pulled it off I pulled it off the driver last night. Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
I'm sorry, for some reason my camera's not working. I'm so sorry.
Listen, if your camera isn't working, or there's some other reason that people can't put on the camera, I get it. But I think it's important for community to, for us to see each other as a class. Okay. I guess that's it. I think that we can start. Okay. Hang on. Let's just see. I think we can start. All right. Let me just start out by saying that I'm sure you're disappointed not to see Yael. I'm sure you're happy to be learning Torah this morning. Hi, Ellen. How are you? I'm sure you're happy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy to see you.
Happy to see you
Not
too.
disappointed.
Okay. No. I'm not fishing for compliments here. I'm just saying, if things were normal right now, then you would be seeing Yael, which is a good thing to see Yael and to hear Yael. She, it would be nice if I could do that too, but our teaching times tend to conflict. But I will say is that obviously the topic today is not, it was sort of I'm a last minute sub here. So the topic today is not about leadership. It's about something else. Actually, Neshama, you heard part of this, but now you get to go through the actual source with me.
Oh, I'm excited. Now we have the source sheet.
Actual source sheet. Okay, and please open your Tanachim. Oh, let me just say this, that right now, I think this shiur really speaks to, completely by accident, I did not expect it to speak to the situation of Klal Yisrael right now, but it turned out that way. And so I think I had a little siyata dishmaya. I had some help from above in choosing to, in teaching this in another course. And it occurs to me that it would be valuable for everybody to have this piece of Torah under their belts in the weeks that are coming.
I think that everything that you can learn these days is connected to what's going on now, one way or another.
That's true. Also.
Anytime I learn something, I'm like, oh, perfect.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Again, I urge you to turn on your cameras, but if you can't, I get it. Okay, so let's start first of all by, there's more people coming in. Hi, Ellen. Okay. So let's start first of all by looking at the beginning of creation. Okay, we're looking at Bereshit Perek Aleph, Psukim Aleph through Dalet or Hey. That's Genesis 1, and we're going to start with verse 1. Okay, and one of the things that happens when you try to teach Bereshit, the Parsha, is it's extremely, extremely difficult and confusing. Because there are a whole bunch of questions you can ask all along about what's going on in terms of creation. Obviously, the description of creation in the first chapter of Bereshit is not a scientific or geographical or it's not meant to be a description of the physical reality so much as it is a description of something else, which is the spiritual meaning of creation. Or another way to put it might be this. God created the world. Okay, we don't really understand how God created the world. We don't understand how something can come from nothing, but God, of course, is the creator. That's part of our definition of what God is. The Torah chooses to tell us, or God chooses to tell us, how the creation of the world works in a particular way and a particular order. And he chooses to tell us this because the psukim of that, or the verses, the words that describe that reality to us, help us understand not so much the physical reality, but the spiritual purpose of the world. Okay, so let's take a look now. We're going to just read through the first 5 psukim of the creation story. We're going to ask a few questions, and then we're going to look at the Alshich together. Okay, so take a look with me, ladies. Bereshit bara Elokim. Everybody have it?
Yes, yes.
I'm going to translate literally. Okay, I'm going to translate literally, and the reason I'm going to translate literally is because I want you to see just how complex these psukim are. When the kids came home from Gan or first grade with their parsha sheet, and what did God create on the first day? What did God create on the second day? It all sounds very simple and childlike. When you actually look at the language of the text, it's actually quite complex. Okay, so let's take a look at it together. Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Literally, this is in the beginning of. That's Bereshit, in the beginning of. The Lord created the heavens and the earth. V'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu, and the earth was chaotic and empty. V'choshech al penei tehom, and darkness was on the face of the abyss. V'ruach Elokim merachefet al pnei hamayim, and the spirit of the Lord was hovering on the face of the waters. Vayomer Elokim yihi or, and the Lord said, "Let there be light." Vayi or, and there was light. Okay, that statement, God says, "Let there be light." Vayomer, and He said, is one of the ways in which creation is expressed in the language of the Torah. And the Lord said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Vayar Elokim et ha'or ki tov, and the Lord saw that the light was good. Vayavdel Elokim bein ha'or uvein ha'choshech, and the Lord divided between, or separated between, the light and the darkness. Vayikra Elokim la'or yom, and the Lord called the light day. Lachoshech kara laila, and to the darkness he called night. Vahi erev, vahi boker, and it was evening, and it was morning. Yom echad, one day. Okay, let's keep these psukim open in front of us, and let's take a look now at the Alshich. Let me share the screen here. And it's a pretty hard Alshich, but we're going to power through. Okay. Let me just see. I'm going to have trouble. I think you're going to have to follow with no, I don't want to annotate. Let me unannotate. We're going to follow with my cursor. I lost that little star thing that I like to work with. Everybody see my cursor here? Okay? Vayar Elokim v'chulei, right? And the Lord saw that the light was good. Limadetanu haTorah she'ein ha'or he'eder ha'choshech. The Torah is teaching us, first, innovative thought of the Alshich, the Torah is teaching us that light is not the absence of darkness. Rak kol echad koach bifnei atzmo, but each one, light and darkness, is a force in and of itself. ומה גם לאומרם ז"ל שביקשה החושך להתערב באור, and how much more so, according to those who say that the darkness wished to mix with the light. I think it's a Gemara in Chagiga, if I'm not mistaken. You should look at the first Rashi, the Rashi on this pasuk. How much more so, according to those who say that the darkness wanted to mix with the light. And the Lord separated between the light and the darkness. V'chein, and similarly, v'lachoshech kara laila. God called the darkness night. Now, I just want you to notice that in pasuk Hey, verse 5. Okay, after it says the Lord divided between the light and the darkness, it says the Lord called the light day and the darkness he called night. Okay, which means there are two separate forces here. This teaches about darkness, that it was a creation and a being in its own right, in itself. Now, what he's saying here is essentially the same way God created light, he also created darkness. And he's going to explain that further. Okay, let's keep going. And it is also possible when we pay attention to the fact that the pasuk says, and it was evening and it was morning, v'lo amar yihi erev uvoker yom echad. And it was night and morning one day. V'gam achal shekara la'or yom v'lachoshech laila, and after God called the light day and the darkness night, haya ra'ui lomar, it should have said, the pasuk should have said, Vayhi Yom, Vayhi Laila, and it was day and it was night, Yom Echad, one day. Okay? In other words, having told us that the light is day and the darkness is night, that's what God calls them, right? It should not have said, and it was evening and it was morning one day. It should have said, and it was light and it was dark, or it was day and it was night one day. Okay, so the first statement that the Alshich makes here, and it can get a little confusing, so I'm going over it, and I also don't know you ladies, so I'm not sure, what you know of this material. Basically, the idea of the Alshich is that when God creates light, we understand that it is a force in nature. It is a thing that has to be created, and it is not simply the absence of dark. Sorry, it's not simply the absence of dark. And similarly, he says, that the darkness also had to be created, right? Because God names day and night, light day and dark night. Okay, let's go on. Omnam, however, I think omnam here means indeed, okay? It was possible that there would be no wait time, there would be no waiting between light and darkness, between the light of day and the darkness of night. In other words, one of the things that we see when we learn Parshat Bereshit is that the Torah forces us to examine our assumptions about the world a little bit. We get up in the morning, we see the sun and we see the moon at night. We see grass is green and the sky is blue, and there's air and there whatever. It rains in certain seasons, it doesn't rain in other seasons, right? We take a look at the world and we assume the world has to be as it is. The Torah reminds us that it was created to be that way. right? In other words, you could have imagined a situation in which the light of day goes out and boom, it's dark. The light of dark or the darkness of night goes out and boom, it's light. Like there's no transitional stage of the gradual darkening of the day or the gradual lightening of the night. רק שבתום אור השמש יתחיל חושך הלילה. In other words, the word could have been just that. At the end of the light of the sun, the darkness of night would begin. Uvitom choshech halayla ya'ir or hashemesh. And at the end of the darkness of night, the light of the sun would appear. Okay, you know, in there's a branch of philosophy called possible worlds philosophy, right? What would the world be like, right? If, right? What would the world be like if daylight was switched off like a light and nighttime was switched off like a light, like an electric, you know, switch or something? But here God saw that the light was good, and it would be fitting to make to make a pause between the light and the darkness. And therefore God divided between light and darkness. Kishem Erev Yom Echad Kishem Erev Yom Echad Shkiat HaChama Kodem Laila. Because the name Erev, which in the language of Chazal is Ben Ha'arbaim, which is twilight. The word Erev is after the setting of the sun, before night comes. Right? He adds, it seems like there's Vahi Erev, and it was evening, and it was morning, right? Boker. And the word Erev is that space, that liminal space between the setting of the sun before night really falls, before night really starts, right? And it's very gradual. V'chein b'siluk hachoshech atzet hashemesh sam boker or. And similarly, with the removal of darkness until the sun comes out, he made the morning light. V'zehu vayavdel. That's what it means that God separated. Now, the separation would not have been as obvious if we didn't have those transitional portions of the day where it gradually gets darker and it gradually gets lighter. Now, I just wanted to point out here that those liminal spaces, especially Bein Ha'arbaim, twilight, what is called in English twilight, that transition from day to night has interesting properties in halacha, and there's a lot of discussion of this. Not that I know anything about halacha, but just so you get the flavor of what's going on here. Is that liminal space, you know, erev, evening, right? Is it day and night? Is it day or night? Is it neither day nor night? You know, that has implications for all sorts of things, like the date of a contract. It has implications for when you can daven, when you have to not daven, right? In other words, it's all of that liminal space is there to show us. It's there to show us that light and dark are being divided. There's something mixed, and light and dark are being divided, whether we're going into night or we're coming out of night. Okay. V'zeu vayavdel, and that is what it means that God divided. Nimtza hayom kolel dalit chelukei zmanim. So we find that the 24 hours, right, of the day contains 4 portions of time. Ha'or, the light, v'hachoshech, the darkness, v'ha'erev, and twilight, v'haboker, and the dawning of the day, right? The gradual lightening of the sky. V'zeh ma'amar ha'katuv, v'yikra Elokim la'or yom. That is what the pasuk teaches us or tells us. The Lord called the light day, hu ha'chelek ha'echad. That's one portion of the day. V'lachoshech, hu hasheni, and the darkness he called night, right? That darkness is the second part of the day. Vayhi erev, and it was evening. Sha'achar ha'or hu hagimel. The evening, which is after the light, is the third part of the day. Vayhi boker sha'achar halayla hu hadaled. And the morning, which is after the night, is the fourth part of the day. Uklalut arba'atam hu yom echad. And the encompassing of all those four parts is one day. Now, one of the things, I'm going to stop here for a second so I can see your faces. And again, I really suggest you turn on your camera. So it's hard to tell if people are following or if they have questions otherwise, okay? But one of the questions really that the Alshich is addressing here is a question that all of the commentators address on Pasuk K, on verse 5. It says God called the day, the light day and the darkness night. Vayhi erev vayhi boker, and it was evening and it was morning. Yom echad, one day. Now, it should be, according to the context of the rest of the parak, it should not be Yom Echad. What should it be?
Rishon.
Rishon, right? The rest of it is Sheni, Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni. In other words, the question that all the Mefarshim ask and deal with is that question of why does it say Yom Echad on the first day? And his answer is very, I think, both interpretively and existentially very important. What is he saying? A day contains four parts, right? If you were a newborn, I don't know, if you were a very young child and you didn't know that the sun rises in the morning and it sets at night, or you didn't experience that, you might think that every passage of time is actually another day. But actually, God created the world so that the passage of time between the transitions between light and darkness themselves are all part of one day. And I think this is existentially important. If we think about light and darkness as metaphors, or we think about twilight as a metaphor for how the human being experiences reality, it's all one day, right? It's all part of a greater unity, okay? Okay, let's go back to any questions before I go on, or we're good? We're good? Okay, those of you who I can see seem to be happy, so we're gonna keep going, okay? So let's go back to our Alshich, okay? And he goes on and he gives another sort of explanation here. O yomar, b'som lev el emro yom echad v'lo amar yom rishon. Or the text is saying when it pays attention to the fact that it says one day and not the first day. And that is that whether we go according to those who say that this light created on the first day was spiritual and it was not produced by the luminaries, by the sun and the moon. Okay, here the Alshich is alluding to a midrash again, which is cited by Rashi. Most of us know this, many of us know this Rashi, where Rashi says that the primordial light, the first light of creation, was not in fact the light that we experience, sun, moon, and stars, the light that we're seeing now outside our windows, but rather it was a spiritual light, which was later hidden for the tzaddikim, for the righteous people in the world to come, right? So that's one opinion, right? That the light of creation, when God says, let there be light, he's not talking about the light that we experience outside our windows, right? Uvein ha'omer, or whether we say, like those who say, shehu ha'me'orot, that this light is the same light that comes from the sun and the moon, ela shelo nitlu bagalgal ad yom daled, but they were not hanging in the constellations in the heavenly bodies until the fourth day. In other words, whether we want to say the light of Pasuk Gimel is God, is the light we see today, or whether we want to say it's referring to some sort of spiritual light to which we will not have access until the end of days, or whichever opinion we take, הנה קצבת יום ולילה עד הרביעי לא היה על ידי סיבוב הגלגלים. Whichever position you take, the apportioning of day and night until the fourth day was not by means of the revolution of the constellations, right? Or of the heavenly bodies. That's one of the questions everybody asks, right? When God created light on the first day, but the sun and the moon and the stars don't appear until the fourth day. What kind of light is that? So that's one reason we conclude that it's not the light we're speaking of. But he says, even if you, however you slice it, right? Whether you say that the light that was created on the first day is the same light we see outside our windows, we do have to say that the apportioning of the day, the way the day was sliced up into units of time, came from God himself and not from the revolution of the constellations. And so, and how the measurement of day and night was, that did not come from the constellations, from the luminaries. Lazeh amal, that's why the pasuk says, Vayavdel Elokim ben ha'or ben ha'choshech. The Lord divided between light and darkness. Ki al yado yitbarach haya na'aseh ha'avdel ben zeh lezeh. Because through God's hand, the division between light and darkness that makes up a day was done, as opposed to the mechanism that is set up of the revolution of the sun and the moon. Each one, the portioning of each one, meaning light and darkness, its length of time was separated from its opposite its opposite partner. And the Lord called the light day v'lo l'sivuv hagalgal. He did not call the revolution of the sun a day. This is an important, subtle point, but it's an important point. We are accustomed to think that the revolution of the sun, or the revolution of the earth around the sun, right, is what determines the length of a day, right? No, it's God who determines the length of the day. And to the darkness he called night, same thing. And it was through God's direct intervention that evening and morning were a measurement of one day, which is known to us from the order of the heavenly bodies. That's therefore, it does not say the first day, but rather one day, because in that day, God set it, right? It was the unique day, if you will. The text does not want us to think it's only the first day. Because the first day, even between evening and morning, without the revolution of the sun, right, of the heavenly bodies, it makes up one day. Now, I think what the Al-Sheikh is saying here is that, in a very real sense, you know, the fact that the lights are not created till the fourth day, or we're told that the lights are not created till the fourth day, is meant to tell us that God works out the times, and it's God plans it, God worked it out, God ran it, God determined that that's the way a day should be. Okay, let's go on.
But didn't that have to last for 3 days, not just the first day, because it was
No,
not...
because afterwards, once God fixes that mechanism, he says, okay, light is going to be day, darkness is going to be night, and there are transitional pauses, right, between the two. that's God's innovation. Now it's true that the second day and the third day he also does this, right?
Right.
But the telling us it's one day is to tell us again that the world we experience was planned in a certain way or could have been a different way. Does that make sense? Yom Echad is to say, wait a minute, why is it one day? Okay, because God determines what will eventually be, you know, if you will, sort of delegated to you know, astronomy, right? That's going to be delegated to astronomy, how the Earth revolves on its axis and surrounds the sun and blah 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 blah. I don't know anything about astronomy either, but you get the picture, right? But that is determined when God decides to make it that way. Does that make sense?
Right. It's almost like a unique day that
Unique,
God,
right? In other words, there are planets where the day is different,
right.
and there are no people living on those planets, right? You know, that's
As far as we know.
as well, I don't know. It's probably, well, let's put it this way. We don't know of any life on those planets, certainly not human life on those planets, but the day's a different length,
Right.
right?
Right.
Okay. Now, this goes back, by the way, to an idea which the Alshich just assumes, and everybody just assumes. I mean, it's the first midrash in Breshit Rabbah, essentially, the idea that God took the Torah and designed the world around the Torah, right? Or in other words, first, before the creation of the world, there was Torah, and Torah is the blueprint or the architect's plan for the creation of the world, right? So we are accustomed to think that we do Kiddush HaChodesh, right? We sanctify the new moon because there's a moon to sanctify, right? From this perspective, though, there's a moon to sanctify so that we can, there is a moon so that we can sanctify it, because there's a mitzvah in the Torah to sanctify the moon. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go on. All right, let's go on. עוד יכוון כי הנה החושך שהיה עד שלא נברא האור, אינו חושך הלילה. The text also wants to tell us that the darkness that existed before the light was created is not the darkness of night. In other words, the two names darkness, which are in Pasuk Bet, and the one that occurs again in Pasuk Gimel, right, are not the same darkness, right? When it says, and darkness was on the face of the abyss, remember we read that Pasuk? That darkness and the darkness that we call night is not the same thing. Ki harishon haya he'eder hakodem lahabaya v'haya choshech muchlat. Because the first darkness, that is the primordial darkness, before the creation of light, is the absence which preceded the being or the creation, and it is absolute darkness. In other words, the darkness in Pasuk Bet, V'ruach, I'm sorry, when is it? The earth was chaotic and empty, and darkness on the face of the abyss. That darkness is the absence of creation, right? It's the absence, and it is absolute. It is absolute, right? A student of mine came up with a good metaphor, and again, I don't know anything about astronomy. It's like a black hole, right? Nothing can exist in a black hole. It's like an absence of creation. It's an absence of existence. That preceded creation, right? How much more so, according to those who say that the darkness which was on the abyss is the darkness of Gehinom, and is the darkness that was brought upon the Egyptians. Okay, in other words, the darkness that preceded creation is the absence of being. It's total, it's absolute, right? And later, and he'll talk about the whole Gehinom thing. It's the darkness of Gehinom, and it is the darkness that with which the Egyptians were punished. It's absolute, and here I want to point out something. If you've ever been on a nighttime tiyul, outside in the dark, even on a cloudy night or on a night when there's no moon, even well into the country where there's no artificial light, your eyes adjust to the darkness and you can see. You can't see great. I mean, I wouldn't run in a wooded area in that sort of situation, but there's some light, right? Whatever light there is, ambient light, whatever, it's not absolute. In fact, when we want to talk about, we want to say that it was so dark I could see nothing, we say Choshech Mitzrayim, right? The darkness of Egypt. So the darkness of night is not that absolute, complete absence of any kind of light. V'zeyomar vayavdel, and this is what the word vayavdel, and he divided, comes to say, klomar, which is to say, Bahavio ha'o, when God brought the light, lo nitbatel oto hachoshech legamre. The darkness, the primordial darkness before creation was not canceled completely. Rak huvda lemakom hanaot lo shehu begehinom. Rather, it was separated to the place that is fitting for it, which is Gehinom. Now, this gives a sort of definition of what Gehinom is. Okay? If we say that the darkness of before creation is the absence of creation, the absence of being, that's what Gehinom is. It's like a total, like, in that respect, a total sort of obliterate. It's the black hole, if you will. והנה לכל הפירושים אין אותו החושך ראוי להיכלל באור היום, להיקרא שניהם יום אחד. And according to all of the commentators, that darkness, meaning the darkness that preceded creation, is not fitting to be included with the light of day, to be called both of them one day, right? If you were to take that nullification of creation, or that prior to creation darkness, right? It can't be included with the light of day within one day. And that darkness is not the darkness of the second night. The darkness of before the creation of light is not the darkness that appears on the second night. Okay? If so, the day should have started in the morning, right? Alshich is making a very interesting observation here. A lot of people ask this question, but he's sort of building the question in a very interesting way. A lot of people say, why does the Jewish day start at night? Right? Everybody else doesn't start at night. We start at night, right? The day starts at night. In terms of the creation story, we would have expected the day to start with morning, the day, right? Why? Because first there's the primordial darkness, right? Then there is God creates light, which is Yom, right? God calls the light day, right? And the primordial darkness can't be included in that day because it's of a different nature than the created object light, okay? So really, the day should have started from the morning. V'yigamer balayla shacharav, and it should end with the night that follows, the way the rest of the world does it, right? Amar ki lo ken asahu yitbarach. The text tells us, the Torah says, or the pasuk says, that God didn't do it that way. רק ויקרא לאור יום ולחושך הנזכר קרא לילה. But God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. אם היותו בלתי ראוי להיקרא בכללות היום. Even though it's not really fitting for it to be considered in the category of day. ולמה עשה כן? Why did God do that? Why does he have the first day start or the day start at night? Kadesh came so that through this, Vayhi Erev Tchila, and it was evening first, V'achar kach Vayhi Boker, and afterwards it was morning. V'lo yitapech liot boker v'achar kach erev yom echad, and that it would not change to be morning, and then afterwards evening would be one day. Va'al kain lo amar yom rishon. That's why it doesn't say the first day. Lomar, which is to tell us, ki ma she'oto hachoshech nichlal bayom, the fact that that darkness of before creation was included in that first day, haya yom echad bilvad v'lo yoter, was only for one day and not any further. And the reason for that is what he's saying is, it's a big chiddush what he's saying here. He's saying we start the before there's light, there's a primordial darkness, which is the absence of creation. Then there's day, there's light, and that becomes day. And we count that first primordial darkness, which later is separated out of the world, right? It's in Gehinom. It's only for the punishment of the Egyptians, right? It doesn't exist in our world. When we use the word darkness in those two psukim, we're talking about completely different things. But it's the darkness which does not exist in our world anymore is included in describing the first day, the day that is the one day. And the reason for this is כי רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא מאז ברא העולם לרמוז תכליתו. Because the Holy One, blessed be He, wanted from the instant that He created the world to allude to its purpose. He wanted to teach us the purpose of the world. V'hu, and that is, ki tchila yishamesh ha'erev. And that is that at the beginning, the twilight is there, the darkness is there. V'hu ha'olam hazeh v'tzarot ha'tzadikim bo, which is this world and the suffering of the righteous in it. V'achar kach or ha'olam habai v'yu shomrim laboker. And afterwards will be the light of the world to come, and they will guard for the morning. We'll come back to that pasuk in a minute. He's paraphrasing a pasuk in Tehillim. V'lo yakutzu avtei Hashem asher tzar lahem ba'olam hazeh. And the servants of God will not become disgusted, will not be fed up, will not be despairing that it is hard for them in this world. Ki or tzadikim yisamach, because the light of the righteous will make them happy. That light is the light of the world to come. That's why it's the first thing that is created, and he's going back to the idea that first light was a spiritual light and not a physical light. That was why it was created first, and that was why it was separated for the tzaddikim in the future to come. Because after this world comes the world to come, as was spoken. The pasuk, and we'll come back to this idea in a second. The pasuk that the Alshich is referring to is one of the Shirei HaMa'alot. You find it. It's in Tehillim. Hang on. Well, we've been saying this parak a lot, actually. Mima Amakim. No, I'm in Mishlei. I want to be in Mishlei. Cool. Cool. And Halalukas. Here it is. Okay. Here it is, Kuf Lamed. It is Psalms 130. And it's a parak a lot of people have been saying a lot the last few days. It's talking about how we call out to God from the depths, right? Shir ha'ma'alot mima'amakim kiratich Hashem, a song of steps, a song of ascents. From the depths, I call out to you, Hashem, and we ask Hashem to listen to our voices. We ask him not to count our sins. We ask him to forgive us. And in Pasuk Hey it says, Kiviti Hashem kivta nafshi. I hope Hashem, and my soul hopes. V'lidvaro hocholti, and to his words I wait. Nafshi la Hashem. My soul is waiting for God. Mishomrim laboker, shomrim laboker. More than the guardians who wait for morning, wait for morning. Right? In other words, when a person is doing his guard duty at night, he waits, he yearns for the morning. I yearn to God more than the watchers, the guards wait for the morning so that their shift will end and the day will start and the fears of the night will go away. So the Alshich is saying here that the first act of creation, which is light, whether we say it's the primordial light that is put aside for the tzaddikim in the world to come, or it's the light that we look out the window and see every day, that light is preceded by darkness. And it is part of all, it's all part of the same day. Why? It's the Yom Echad, so that we will understand, so that we will know that the world, this world, which is often a world of darkness, is waiting for the world of light. Or and again, I don't think the Alshich is saying this, but this is what I take away from it personally. The Jew knows that however dark the night is, the morning's coming. The morning's coming. And I think, arguably, our consciousness of that, the fact that the Jewish day starts at night and that we wait for the morning, has probably made it possible for us to survive Jewish history. And without knowing the Alshich, I think it's a subliminal message, right? Without knowing the Alshich, without knowing the Rashi, without understanding the depth of the creation story, which, by the way, is virtually impossible to understand unless you're a Kabbalist, right? Without that, even without that, the subliminal message of that every Jewish child gets, right, at night is we have to hurry. Shabbat is coming in with nightfall. Comes Shabbat, right? And you start at the night and the day continues to the morning because we are waiting for the light. That's what we're waiting for. And it is so profoundly true right now. I mean, we're in darkness and we have to believe, and I think we do believe, that there will be a next day, there will be an afterwards. There'll be an afterwards. And the afterwards will be filled with light, right? With all the pain, with all the suffering, there'll be a morning. Every day starts with darkness, and then comes the morning. Now, I'm going to stop now and take questions, and then if we have time, I want to just show you two of the Midrashim that I think influence, only two of the Midrashim that I think influence the Alshich's reading. Yes, Arlene, you have a question.
It's interesting that there's no absolute, we can't handle the absolute. We can't handle the absolute darkness or the absolute light. Only the tzaddik, or the noise, is Rakat tzaddikim. So
I'm having trouble hearing you. You said we can't handle the absolute darkness or the absolute light. Go ahead.
I mean, he says the absolute light was only it's or Haganuz is only
Uh-huh.
tzaddikim. So, we couldn't do that. But here, what is so nice is that you're ending with this message of hope. This message is something positive to look forward to all the time. And so now
Yeah.
we have the Bein HaArbayim, because without that transition, I don't know. I don't know if we need it. I also then have another question with Bein HaArbayim.
Mm-hmm.
When a baby is born and needs a brit, and he's born Bein HaArbayim, what day
It's
is
a
it?
halachic question. It's a halachic question. That's a halachic question. It's not clear, right? In other words, if he's born at night, we know when to make the brit. If he's born during the day, we know when to make the brit. Bein HaArbayim is that place where is it day and night? Is it neither day nor night? Where do we by the way, and babies are born when they want to be born, right? They don't ask us. Yes, I don't know. It's discussed in halacha. How do you treat it?
But obviously we need that Bein HaArbayim. We must have a transition. We need a transition.
I think you need the transition so that you're in a place where you are. I mean, look, the Alshich says God creates the world that way for a reason, right? I think the reason we need that transition is when we're in that muddy place where we don't know what light and dark are, where we don't know whether it's day or night. In that place, we are able to say, oh, now I know the difference between day and night, because when they're mixed or when they're gradually changing from one to the other, then you can lose sight of the fact that there's darkness and there is light. That's part of the separation. Or another way to put it is this, and again, I'm probably being too philosophical here, but I'll indulge me, okay?
Go ahead.
I think that if creation is God's way of the world is God's way of communicating with us. I mean, obviously, as the Jewish people, we're very privileged to have the Torah, which is God's way of communicating with us. But awareness of God's presence is not just for the Jewish people, right? God wants to communicate with with the beings that He created. Darkness, and we live in a world day after day after day after day. We don't see it anymore. Twilight is the place where God says, pay attention. That was day. Now it's turning into night. The world is made up of or has potential for light and darkness. And that confusing place where they're mixed is a way of making us notice them. It's the separation.
But Simi, that confusing is focusing on Erev as that confusing place. But one could say Boker also has elements of that. And so
Sure.
the question is it that when we can't distinguish between, and here's again philosophical, between light, or and Yom and Laila, evil and good, that we are destined to move Bein HaArbayim towards the darkness, but when we can move from Boker to Yom. I don't know. That's maybe
I think for example, how early can you daven in the morning, right?
Right.
People who daven hanetz, right? People who daven hanetz, they start davening before Boker.
Uh-huh.
So, right, they start davening before day breaks. They start, you can hear the birds, right? You can hear the birds waking.
Right.
They start davening before day breaks, so that they can say the Amidah exactly when day starts, right? That's also a transitional time. When can you daven? When are you allowed to daven? Before that, when does the day start in terms of the light? And I think, yes, we live in a world of Bein HaArbayim. There's a lot of confusion. I think that's true. I think that's true. The sun is not always shining clearly, and we don't always have a clear sense of what's right or wrong. I think that's also part of creation. we're put into the world to make choices. And if it were a straight black and white answer, then we wouldn't be exercising free will very much, would we? I mean,
It's true.
it's murky. It's murky. Okay, any more questions? I guess we're not going to get to the Midrashim. I just wanted you to hear the words of the Alshich, and I think what's really the Alshich is very interesting parshan. If you've learned any Alshich before, he thinks differently than other people, and I think one of the things that is so beautiful is that his insight here, of course, comes from his Kabbalistic background and the fact that he knows a lot of Torah Sheba'al Peh, clearly. But he's paying very close attention to the interpretive difficulties in the text, and it's distinctions of language that make up his understanding, sort of enable him to explain to us, why does the Jewish day start at night? Okay, so I'm going to leave you ladies with a hope that and a bracha that we all get to see the light soon. And I imagine, I was thinking about this also. Even Bezrat Hashem, if we and are somehow miraculously introduced to a new world order in the Middle East, it's still going to be twilight. There's going to be a lot of grieving and a lot of work to do to build and to rebuild and to heal all of us in our own ways and help others heal people who really, really suffered. It's going to, even if the light is coming, Ben Bezrat Hashem, we can hope for Mashiach also. I mean, we should hope for Mashiach, but even without that, the day will come and hopefully we'll be able to get there and everything will be better. Until we get there, there's that place where the light and the darkness are going to be mixed. And maybe there's a job there for us to do, all of us in our own way, for each other, for ourselves. So Bezrat Hashem, let's maybe Mashiach will come tomorrow. Halavai.
Dang.
Meanwhile, there's work to do. Okay. Chizku v'imtzu chazakna v'imatzna. Be strong and stay safe. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.